I was going to make a video of the internal parts of a car battery. Since this is kind of a automotive channel, well, it pretty much is, you all have to have a battery. Maybe just a little informational video. It's always nice to learn, even if it's something that you really might not give a shit about. Well, once I got the battery apart, I realized that I probably should have showed you a how-to, just in case you might want lead for something. I will say that the lead in the battery isn't pure lead. There's oxide in between the plates that is made out of pure lead, but other than that, it's not. This is a battery, I believe it's Johnson Control, because I started at Exide in 1995, and oh yeah, by the way, I worked manufacturing automotive batteries for 16 years. This battery's from 1988, so it's before my day, and I don't ever remember seeing a battery like this. So I think Johnson Control made diehards, then Exide had a contract for a while, and now Johnson Control has it again. So, I mean, if you want to make fishing weights or whatever out of battery lead, I think it'll work. It just, battery lead is, this is probably cast lead plates in it, so it's probably antimony lead, and then the newer ones are, in smaller batteries, like car batteries, would be calcium lead. Calcium was used in a cast grid, or a plate in a battery. The machine makes two at a time, and then they eventually get separated or whatever. Well, calcium lead was, that alloy was made to strengthen the lead, to cast it into a strip. In my 16 years, I started in the department that formed the batteries, charged them. And then I gradually worked my way to the beginning. I worked in assembly, which is where the nuts and bolts of the battery, I mean, we actually make the battery, put the parts together. And then lastly, I worked in the casting department, casting the strip that goes into the plates. And there's still grid casting and then strip casting. Grids, like I said, are for the heavier duty batteries, marine batteries and such. So anyway, if you want this lead for whatever fucking reason, I'm just going to tell you, you got to be careful with mixing. And I don't want to even get into to tell you, oh, the differences, because if I recall correctly, I believe mixing calcium lead and antimony puts off a gas that could be dangerous. I will just say that if you have two separate batteries, and say like one's a big one and one's like a normal size battery, I wouldn't do that. I'd make, because it's hard to tell what kind of lead it is, just for your own safety. And actually for your own safety, I wouldn't try this at home. But if you ever want to take a battery apart, here's how to do it. Now you're going to have to get a torch. This battery is very old. It's been bone dry for years, so I wasn't worried about it. A newer battery, or especially a wet battery, one with fluid on it, they produce hydrogen. I've witnessed the cover removed, and now this, you might think, well, that's a lid. Well, it's not a lid. That's what I thought when I first started out there, but it's actually a cover, because it's not supposed to come off once it's put on. So no, this is a cover, this is a case. I've actually seen a wet battery with the cover removed with the battery acid in it. It didn't blow up, but what I would do is, if you're ever going to do this, I'd take the caps off, everything that will let anything out, even the little eye. Drain all the acid out. Don't just dump it on the ground. That shit's kind of nasty. It's 2/3 water, but still. Put it somewhere, use that for something, do whatever, dispose of it properly, and let this so much air out for a long fucking time before you try this. But anyway, what you're going to have to do is, you get the cover hot to where it looks like it's liquid. I mean, don't just completely fucking melt it. But what you're going to do is, okay, here's what the inside of the case looks like. And where this, a heat seal machine or a Belomatic will take this cover and seal it to the battery itself, to the case, and that's where it's connected. You see cell walls, well, I mean, you can see the cell walls and then the outside of the battery. So you need to break that. So what you do is you just get the whole damn cover hot, and you take a screwdriver, and you can hear it. You'll hear it's like a snapping sound of the plastic separating. And then I took channel locks and I kind of grabbed the edge, and this is an old battery, very old, and it's been out of commission for a while. I think the older the battery, the easier it'll come apart. And then actually this one came off pretty damn easy. Got my screwdriver in there and just popped right off. Well, first of all, I almost forgot. You're going to have to cut the terminals off. And bolt cutters are... mine wouldn't even open up enough, so you just get a hammer and chisel and knock them off. And then once you get the terminal off, hit this with a hammer or something, and you'll see to where the post will actually separate from, okay, what happens when you make these, there's a lead rod that sticks out of these, and then there's a lead circle that comes on the cover. That's put on there, it's sealed, and you get a battery like this would be handmade, especially back then. I guess they all were. They put a mold around this, and this would have a circle in it, and then they just get it hot and melt it, and then that's that. So once you separate the post from the lead on the cover, and you'll see it when you hit it with something, you'll see that it's separated. This one wouldn't have mattered, it's so old. There you have it. Now this is called a strap, and this battery is so old and deteriorated. Underneath this strap would be lugs. All these plates would have lugs on them. And the cast on strap machine would take the group of plates, which is called the group, and it'd take it in a mold upside down, and it would cast this strap. And see if it's coming apart. And you can see where the lugs to the plates were. And then, let me see if I can get one of these cells out. Yeah, I mean, this thing is just fell to shit. So anyway, what happens is there's a machine that stacks the negative and positive plates. And there's two different kinds. This one's an old one. So instead of wrapping an envelope around either the positive or negative plate, this one's got separators, which will be the old type of stacking machines. That grid's just going to fall apart. And that's just a piece of, that's just a battery separator. And it keeps the negative and positives from touching. So that machine would make the group. The groups are then put into the battery. Well, pardon me. The groups then go to the COS machine, which stands for cast on strap. And that puts these on the lugs, connects the group, and then you'll see there's, well, you can't really see on it, there it is. You can see that there's holes, and they don't come that way in the case. You'll put it on a machine that punches the holes in it, and they stagger back and forth. And anyway, the lugs on the strap, which we call them tombstones, obviously they're not, I mean, no meat at the hole, and then there's a machine, it's a sonic welder. It'd come pinch this, and with ultrasonic pulse, it would actually weld the straps together. And then going back to what I said before, the heat seal puts the cover to the case. So there you can see how the post is sticking out from the case itself. Then that's welded on by a torch. And nowadays, with automotive batteries, golf cart batteries are still made this way, and some heavy-duty industrial ones. Something like this would be made differently. It'd run through the newer kind of stacking machine where it put an envelope around it, and they mostly wrapped the negative plate. Back in the day, they used to wrap the positives. And there's some deep cycle batteries they still wrap the positives, but goddamn, when I quit, it was we didn't make them. I think up in Manchester, Iowa. I was up there in 2004 to learn a new casting machine, and I noticed they were still running batteries that wrap the positive plate. Yeah, but there'd be bigger deep cycles, and it really is pretty irrelevant. But it's just the gist of it. That's the nuts and bolts of the battery, how they're made, and I don't know how many plates per cell usually determine how powerful the battery is. Also, the problem you run into with a battery like this, it has, I don't know how many plates it is, I can't count because they're just disintegrated. I'm guessing it's like a 20, maybe 22 plate per cell battery, which is it's a heavy son of a bitch. But the problem you run into with that is you run out of room. Some of the 65 group batteries, which is pretty much your standard battery that comes in a pickup, half ton or 3/4 ton or 1 ton. You know, a diesel you'll have two, but they'll both be 65 groups. Depending on how many cold cranking amps there is, and that's basically determined on how many plates there is. If you get a smaller one with smaller plates per cell battery, with a battery that big with a lot of cell space, they actually put ribs in the side, which separates the group from the side of the battery, which generally could help with longevity. So if you don't need a really powerful battery, like say you have just an F-150 or Silverado, whatever your manual says for cold cranking amps will work. A lot of people run 1,000 CCA batteries, and that's when you're going to be packing some serious shit in here. And that's, I mean, they could last a long time too, but odds are they're not. And I will say, when you're handling a battery, the number one thing that fucks these up is when these are compromised. Your straps, the weld on your straps, and dropping them, slamming them around is the worst thing for a battery. These things aren't cheap anymore. The price of lead, and that's why I don't think anybody would cut one of these up and make fishing weights. If you do, whatever. The price of lead's pretty high, especially to where it was, 15 years ago or so. Anyway, they give you a pretty good core charge, or if you got a bunch of old batteries laying around, just take them in. And it used to be the places kind of whined about it, but now with the price of lead being good, I don't think it's as high as it was a few years ago, but it's good enough to where they don't mind taking it off your hands. And even if they don't pay you, shit, just not having this shit around is good, because this is some pretty hazardous shit. It's a pretty nasty hot job, a lot of chemicals. For instance, the lead and the acid are common sense, but to get the lugs to adhere to the strap, the lugs are first dipped in this shit we call flux, and it's a nasty smelling chemical. And yeah, and then the flux would hit the molten lead and it smoked and stunk, and it's a filthy fucking job, man, but it paid well. Ooh, okay, one thing I forgot to mention, if you see this, notice how my hands are getting dirty. It's obviously wet in here. This battery's been sitting open for, oh man, about 20 years. So all the acid has been flushed out of this son of a bitch. This is just water. But if you do tear into one of these sons of bitches, and even if you let her dry out and you dump all the acid out, and it's damp, it's going to be acid. It's 2/3 water, but it'll still burn. It's not like a terrible burn. It won't melt your skin, but it'll burn. And if you got open cuts in your hand, whatever. I would recommend using rubber gloves. If I did this on a battery that wasn't in this shape, I definitely would have had rubber gloves on. So just so you know. If you think there might be anything I left out, I don't think so, but any questions, feel free to ask, and happy Hanukkah.